Thank you, Elena, and anyway, let's get on with the show, because you know why you're here. You know what's going to happen. And to try and encapsulate such a dazzling career of the man you are about to see shortly, so many, 300 films in 1 hour plus, come on. So you know what I'm going to do, with no further ado, as everybody used to say, I'm going to show you a highlight reel. I want to say that Lorenzo Di Stefano helped us put it together earlier, but we have the razzle-dazzle moment. And I want to say one other thing before the lights go down and John hits it. And I have to quote Betty Davis from the movie All About Eve. And she said, to you movie mavens, she said, "Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy and entertaining night." So let's hit the reel.
Singing in the rain, singing in the rain, what a glorious feel, and I'm happy again. I'm laughing at clouds so dark, and the sun's in my heart, and I'm ready for love. Let the stormy clouds chase everyone from the place.
You mean that bit of wool on your tit?
Come on with the rain, I've a smile on my face.
What's there to smile about?
Down the lane with a happy refrain.
She was French, so took me to this cafe. She got me drunk, you see, on Pernod. Yeah, Pernod.
What else?
You know what happened, of course.
No, what?
I got drunk.
Have I forgotten anything?
I'm happy again.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
I'm singing.
If you go out of here, I'll have you court-martialed and shot for desertion. Do you understand that, Crawford?
I have existed from the morning of the world, and I shall exist until the last star falls from the night. Although I have taken the form of Caius Caligula, I am all men as I am no man, and therefore I am a god.
Oh, what are you babbling about, Wells? Really, you've become quite an old fool, haven't you?
Yes. Yes, I am an old fool. I know nothing.
And she means that much to you?
Yes. Please.
I'm sorry. HG, it's checkmate, and you've lost again.
Save me. Only you can stop this killing. Make love with me. Save both.
No. I'm not like you.
Well, that's the lie that will kill your lover.
It's like a predator. It's stalking you. Oh, you can try and outrun it with doctors, medicines, new technologies. But in the end, time is going to hunt you down.
All I'd like to say is, the world is full of losers.
You built an amazing business. No one can take that away from you. But under the circumstances, this is a lot of money. This is public school. If I can keep the girls off the pole and the boys off the pipe, I get a bonus.
Head down to the motel. Giles, you meet her there.
Yes, ma'am.
I really don't feel well enough to be fighting crime. I'm probably best served just holding the fort.
No, you are best served protecting the good citizens of Cryer instead of your own sorry ass.
American women may be fun and Victoria's Secret when you first bed them, but as soon as they get their claws into you, they stop fucking and start eating. And the only ass you're gonna get is a fat one.
Now we have ourselves a game.
Don't fuck! We're going to teach people about the world they lost. Help them start to rebuild it. I mean, look, Shakespeare, Britannica, missing only a few volumes. There's a whole series of beautiful Mozart and Wagner records. In still very pristine condition, but never a Bible. Well, not until now. You know, it's religion that separates humanity. But it's music that brings us all together. You know, more people are killed through religious conflict than any other reason. We are all our own gods.
I beg your pardon?
He's a god now.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for remembering. Especially the ladies. Don't stay up too late. All right? Enjoy yourselves. God bless. Have fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the man of the moment, the man of the hour, Malcolm McDowell. Where to start, Malcolm? My God. But you know, Malcolm and I have talked about things recently, and we've got to start, for those who, believe it or not, don't know exactly your background. So I'm going to start off with a basic question, Malcolm.
Where was I born?
Yes, thank you.
Jesus.
And then
Do
give
we have
us...
to go that far back? Well, I was born in Leeds, in Yorkshire, in 1943. So I have a big birthday coming up. Where did it go?
Yes.
I guess if I was in a prison for 20 years, it would go very slowly. But as I've been having so much fun for the past 60 years, it's gone like that. It's amazing when you're having fun. Anyway, I'd like to say, by the way, to Alicia Hayes, who put together the reel, thank you so much. And I know she's watching. She's a filmmaker in Arkansas. So thank you for putting all that together. That was very kind of you.
Very good. Well, okay, so we're at Leeds where you were born, and then you moved to the other community, fairly well known in the world. And how did you end up in that town?
Well, you know, my father was in the RAF during the war in Bomber Command, and he was a navigator, and so he's moved the family to the East Riding of Yorkshire, where he was flying out of a place called Driffield, which is near Bridlington, which is where my mother and her sister decided to open a boarding house hotel. 40 Towers come to mind. Wasn't quite that bad, but very similar during the war. You can imagine trying to get food and stuff for the guests. It was all black market, and the stories are quite amusing. But anyway, I ended up in Liverpool. My father ran hotels and pubs. I ended up in Liverpool, which is where I kind of grew up, and my father was an alcoholic, so there was always this emotional strife in the family. And, you know, he sort of drank the profits, really, but he was a rather remarkable man, and it's only, in adulthood, way into adulthood, that I've really begun to realize what a terrific guy he was, really. But I think that, honestly, when you do 20-odd trips in a Lancaster bomber, you know, going over enemy territory and being shot out of the skies and having your friends killed, it does something to the mind. And, of course, it's the Second World War. They didn't realize what these, you know, breakdowns were, like they do now, and then so that they can, you know, give our veterans help. At that day, in those days, you were on your own. So he really just really turned to drink, and I, of course, I was a teenager, and I didn't understand it, and I hated it. So as soon as I could, I got the hell out. But he did one thing for me. He paid for me to go to a public school, which is a boarding school, private school in America, similar. It's only similar in the fact that, you know, you are boarder, you stay at the school. The whole thing about England and public schools is a very different psychologically to private schools in America. Public schools in England have been going for 1,000 years, some of them. It is where the aristocrats sent their sons to be educated to either fight the wars for the empire or administer the empire. And so that when I, in 1968, made my first film, which was about a revolution in a public school, it caused almighty kinds of conniptions in England, I'm glad to say. Yes. It was like we stuck a dagger into the heart of the establishment. But you know, the establishment in England are so brilliant because they're like a sponge. And what they did was they took and they were horrified at first, and then the public schools used to show it as part of their curriculum. Brilliant, no? That's public schools for you. That's, you know, that's what they're like. They'll just take any rebels and make them, give them some responsibility and make them prefects or something, and the rebel suddenly disappears. You know? That's sort of what happened to me, actually.
Well,
same thing.
So you mentioned that movie, and of course we must have a little bit from you, Malcolm,
Yes.
about Lindsay Anderson, because there were two guys. The other guy we're going to get to in a minute. Lindsay was brilliant for you, and you got along with him enormously. You made another film. You made another 2 films with him.
Ivor, he was brilliant. Period. Not for me, although I did benefit from his genius, and I don't ban that word around a lot, hardly ever. But if there ever was one that I met, it was Lindsay Anderson. He was the most spectacular person I'd ever met. And, I went for a kind of an open audition. He was auditioning for this movie. I didn't know what the hell the movie was. My agent just said, go. And I rushed to this theater, in London. In the day, they rent out the theaters for auditions, for other things. And so I went to this theater, and I was late because I was rehearsing at the Royal Court. Anyway, I rushed in and got on the stage, and there was this man. Turns out it was Lindsay Anderson, and he was asking me all kinds of questions. And he said, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm doing we're doing a production of Twelfth Night at the Royal Court, and it's a modern dress version of it. And he went, oh, sounds awful. I was perplexed by this because I was a young actor. It was a real feather in my cap, to get a job at the Royal Court Theatre, the most avant-garde, amazing theatre in London. I mean, this is where, Look Back in Anger premiered. This is where Harold Pinter was born, and all these great writers, Joe Orton. I mean, this was it. This was the theater that Olivier was absolutely terrified. He couldn't stand them because they were so cutting edge, and he felt old and dowdy, I happen to know that's true. And I know that when the offer came through for The Entertainer, a John Osborne play, and it came to Laurence Olivier, he went, absolutely not. I wouldn't work with those heathens over there. And Joan said, Larry, this is your chance. And he went, oh, yes, good idea. And Olivier was brilliant in The Entertainer. And it is said, and I believe it, Lindsay told me actually, that it's the nearest to actual Laurence Olivier that he'll ever get. A sort of old, past it comic, the seaside. And that was the nearest to what Olivier's actual persona was like. I don't know whether it's true, but it's a good story.
Yes, good story.
Yeah.
Oh, Lucky Man. Malcolm, that should be the title of your autobiography, but let's go.
Are you threatening to write it?
No.
Teasing. Oh, Lucky Man, yes. Well, the If was very, very successful, and amazingly so. You go from doing small parts in the theater, suddenly, you read that you're a movie star. I mean, it's ridiculous because I was so broke, because in those days you did a movie and then you'd have to wait a year for the damn thing to come out. Now they just push a few buttons on a computer and it's edited. And it takes a month, It took a whole year for the thing to come out, and I kept waiting, and I kept saying, Lindsay, I'm absolutely broke. I don't know whether... And he goes, well, you can paint my kitchen. I'll give you £20. So I started to paint his kitchen, and his brother, Murray, who was an airline pilot and a very interesting guy, he was staying at Lindsay's flat, and so we started talking, and he was so fascinating. He was telling me all about Rilke, and I didn't know anything about this writer, But anyway, he was absolutely into Rilke. And suddenly, the weekend is almost gone, and I thought, God, we've only done like a quarter of it. We haven't even moved things. We've just sort of painted up to it and kind of put the brush a bit like that. And then he made a mistake, and he painted half the window, and I went, let's paint the windows in white, because, it is a bathroom. People are not supposed to see in. So, yeah, Anyway, Lindsay came back and had an absolute shit fit. And, but I did get the 20 pounds, which kept me going for a bit longer,
But Malcolm, I mean, other than me inviting you over to paint my kitchen, which I will not do, weren't you a coffee salesman? And wasn't that story based on your adventures?
Between the end of my schooling, and I just had it with school, and I just wanted to get out, and I decided that I wanted to be an actor. So I decided that because at school I had the most brilliant headmaster who was a total theater nut. He absolutely loved the theater, and his sister was the wardrobe mistress at RADA. And so we always got the most incredible costumes for any of the productions. Now, we did a Shakespeare production in the summer and a sort of Christmas show at Christmas. It was sort of pantomime or something, or whatever. And, I got cast in all these plays, and I played all the great parts in Shakespeare before I left school. Now, I know it's school, and they were probably terrible. But weirdly enough, I do remember the first time I stepped onto a stage, I literally wanted to throw up in the wings. And I remember going onto the stage, the lights hit me, the void of the audience, this black hole. And suddenly I just felt absolutely at home. And weirdly, instead of feeling nauseous and nervous, I just absolutely loved it. And as soon as I got the first laugh, which was an ad lib, that was so infectious and so, it gave me such an adrenaline rush, I thought, I love a bit of that. And so I always thought if all else failed in my life, I'd become an actor, which is pretty much what happened.
Yeah. Okay, we've got to move on to that other director, but I know that whenever I read this line to you, Malcolm, you are likely to get up and leave, but I love to read it to you, and then you can tell me what you think. You've heard it before, that when this film came out, the critic Roger Ebert wrote...
Oh, he was a twerp. Don't read critic. What are you reading, critic? Who gives a rat's ass about fucking critic?
Yeah, but
who cares?
But I love that line.
Are we literally going to quote a poor critic who nobody remembers, or are we going to talk about Stanley Kubrick, who's a fucking great filmmaker?
Okay, all right. Okay, Malcolm.
I refuse to talk about damn critics because I don't care about them. They're not creative people.
Point taken.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, he was, of course, a critic.
Okay.
Now it all comes.
All right, so, well, let's skip the critic and let's go...
I'm only joking.
I know you are, that's okay. That's all right, but it's fun. So let's skip the critic and let's go to Stanley.
Good.
Because it's the 50th anniversary last year of the film.
Yes, right in COVID. So that put a kibosh on any celebration for that. But it is an amazing film, I have to say. Yeah. And it is, I suppose, I can read the obituary now. I can see it. Malcolm Clockwork Orange McDowell, which really kind of pisses me off. But at least, at first, it was Malcolm if McDowell for like 10 years, until Clockwork got into the psyche, and then I noticed they don't say Malcolm Halloween 7.
Yeah,
no. So I guess I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, I love to wind you up with Clockwork. Sorry about that. So go ahead, because
don't comment. Just let it go.
So you're playing this thug, and how come the thug is so endeared to us all? I mean, tell us, how the hell did that happen?
You mean the good acting? Is that what you're talking about?
We should.
I really don't know what else to say. Here you have an immoral man that people seem to connect to. It's the only other instance I can think of. I'm not. We've now had the Hannibal Lecters and all that. This is way before that. The only instance I think where the sort of leading man was immoral was Shakespeare's Richard III. And actually, I always had that in my mind, talking about Olivier, but it was always in my mind somewhat doing that performance. That and Eric Morecambe.
Morecambe and Wise?
Yes. Yes. I completely stole a lot of stuff from Morecambe and Wise. Comedians, you know, I just love comedians. And so you're doing this serious stuff, but inside your head, you're absolutely having a good laugh.
So Stanley,
Singing in the Rain, you know.
Oh, well, we'll get to Singing in the Rain in a moment, because I know there's some interesting elements to that. Singing in the Rain, the choreography in Clockwork was a bit bizarre, but you came up with that, didn't you?
Yes, that's right, yes. I mean, I've told that story many times, but yes, we were stuck, and, you know, we didn't really know what to do. We sat around for 5 days on the set without Kubrick turning over the camera, because if there wasn't anything to shoot, then we're not going to turn the camera. He didn't have to go by, you know, scheduling and all that. He was Stanley Kubrick. And that was it. So he removed all the crew into a tent in the garden of this place, and then we started to work it out. But, you know, Stanley, in the book, the boys come in, the Droogs, and they beat up this guy and rape his wife, you know. And I said, well, you know, we've just shot the end of the movie. This has a style. We can't go into a, you know, naturalistic performance here. We've got to come up with something. You know, what are we going to do? Well, he had me the thought that I'd throw the bottles of booze through this great window or something. Anyway, none of it worked. And on the 5th day, I was sitting on these steps. It was like a 2-tiered, there was a living room, steps, and then the sort of kitchen dining room. I was sitting on the steps, and as he passed me, he just said, "Can you dance?" I was so bored that I jumped up and said, "Can I dance? I'm singing in the rain." Boom! And just ad-libbed the whole thing, and I looked at him, he was laughing, so his tears were rolling down his face. We had it. The key to the movie is right there. The key. Because, you know, the beating, the rape, all came out of this incredible song, and the image that we have of Gene Kelly, it's Euphoria. And why it came out of my mouth, because I didn't think about it, by the way, it was instinct. It's because Alex, at that particular time, is euphoric. And so hence, there it is. And it worked fantastically. And Kubrick knew it. I mean, Stanley was brilliant, is that he knew a good thing, you know, when he saw it. Because I remember, because I was used to, you know, Lindsay Anderson, who was a very nurturing director. I mean, he'd worked in the theater, and so he loved actors. You know, a lot of directors don't like actors, really. They say they do, but they don't. They're sort of scared of them or something. You know, there's something, you can always tell, you know, 50 paces, but Lindsay loved his actors, and it was a company, and, you know, Stanley did not like actors much, because Stanley felt actors could hold him to ransom. I mean, which is nonsense, really. Maybe the other ones he'd worked with, I don't know, but certainly I didn't. I mean, I was just thrilled to be working with this great man. And, you know, I liked him tremendously, actually. I really got a kick out of him. He was a very extraordinary man. his intellect was, I mean, second to none. He was a child prodigy and all that. At the age of 16, he had the front cover of Look magazine, which was the biggest selling magazine in America at the time, of a newsboy with a newspaper which was the end of World War II, I think. And he captured that and said, wow, that was great that you were there to capture that. He goes, no, I set that up. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course he did. And Stanley was pretty amazing, but had a weird side. He was totally a paranoid. He wouldn't fly, and he hated getting in the car with me if I was driving. Well, he wasn't a bad judge there, but I had a little sports car and used to terrorize him. But anyway, and I used to love it too when I did it. I'd have him going, oh no. I remember once going in to his study, I guess, and he was listening to something on earphones, and I thought, and as I went in, he went, and I went, and I thought, oh, he's listening to, some Beethoven or something. And, oh, this would be great. Anyway, I waited there like 10 minutes. And in the end, he took the earphones off and said, another near miss at Heathrow.
Oh, my God. That's pretty... Yeah.
I mean, you've got to be kidding. I mean, it was weird. So if you were shooting on location and, they said, everybody, okay, we've finished for the day, you ran for your car. Yeah. Because, in England, in the country, these little lanes, if he got out first, there'd be a huge traffic jam going back because he drove at like 15 miles an hour.
Yes. I must ask you, when you read the Burgess book, did the Burgess book make sense, or did the Burgess book, was it then bastardized to the way that Stanley did it?
What happened was Stanley saw If. Now, I didn't, of course, know this, but his widow, Christiana Kubrick, told me only 15 years ago. I didn't really know any of this history, but he saw If. He was watching it. He heard all about it. He was watching it, and he hit the intercom and said, relace it. When I'd played my first scene, he watched the first scene that I played 4 times. And then he turned to Christiana and said, we found our Alex.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
No auditions or anything like that. But and when I met him, he gave me the book and he said, call me.
Yeah, but didn't you say once, I remember in our conversation, that Mick Jagger and some of the Rolling Stones wanted to do this movie?
Apparently, yeah, but I didn't know that then, and Stanley didn't want them. Stanley, it was bought, the book was purchased, the rights, by Cy Litvinov and Max Rabb. And they are credited on the movie as executive producers. They had nothing to do with the movie at all, except they owned the book at one point. Stanley didn't want to approach them because he thought they'd put the price up, so he got Warner's to buy it for him. And which they did, and I don't think he paid very much for it. And, Anthony Burgess was always rather pissed off because he was, taken for a bit of a ride. And, he in this is just as important as Stanley Kubrick or Malcolm McDowell for sure. I mean, it's his brilliance, his book. Anyway, when I first read it, I really had a problem. I was, looking at the glossary and trying to figure it out, and I thought, oh, well, I could never make a film out of this. Anyway, I thought I better read it again, and I read it again. I thought, see something here. And then when I read it the third time, I went, holy mackerel, what a great part. So I called him after a week And he said, I've been waiting for your call. I said, well, I wanted to make sure, Stanley, that I understood exactly, because he expected me to call the next day, I think. And I'm rather glad I didn't, actually, because, anyway, that's neither here nor there. But, and then I went out to see him many times, and, it's interesting that he really got to do the directing of me, anyway, in the 6 months or whatever, before we actually started to shoot the movie, because I'd be over there talking to him. We'd have the awful takeout dinners over there, usually at Chinese, and Chinese from a Chinese restaurant in Boreham Wood. I mean, the mind boggles.
Yeah.
It was so hideous, and I said, Stanley, don't you think you can go a little more upmarket on the... He'd go, you don't like this?
Yeah.
Like it was a shock, and anyway, he'd eat in a funny way. He'd eat the stewed pears with the, chicken salad or whatever. And I'd say to him, I notice you're eating your dessert with the main. And he'd say, yeah, that's the way Napoleon ate. No, you think I'm kidding? Can't make this up. I mean...
Malcolm, did you ever get any feedback from Gene Kelly about your rendition of that song?
Well, there was a time, yes. When the film opened, great success, all the rest of it, I was invited to go out to California, and one of the minders from Warner Brothers asked me if I'd like to go to a Hollywood party at one of the old Hollywood, mansions in Beverly Hills. And of course, I was thrilled. I mean, to meet some real movie stars, not these, Peter Fondas and all that. I mean, that's not real. To me, that was, that wasn't, I wanted to meet Jimmy Cagney and the great ones, the ones I'd grown up with. And I said, yes, I'd love to go. And we went, and there were some wonderful people there. And then the minder came and said, Malcolm, Gene Kelly's here. You want to say hi to Gene? I went, oh, yeah, I'd love to say hi to Gene. Well, he had his back to me, and the minder tapped him on his back. He turned round. I was a bit startled to see me. I was announced by the minder, and he looked me up and down, didn't crack a smile or anything, turned round and walked off. And the minder was then started to apologize. And I went, hey, whoa, don't apologize. I quite understand how he feels about this. I mean, but what can I tell you? Of course, it's in homage to him and his brilliance that I just happened to pop into my head. I mean, so I can't help that, but of course, he thought of these bastards over in England, those little upstarts over there. They've taken my piece of genius, and they've used it for a damn rape, and viddy well, little brother, viddy well, hey, I'm singing in the rain. And of course, so anyway, I wasn't offended in the slightest because I understood. And then 40 years later, I was doing a talk at the Academy about, I suppose, the 40th anniversary of the thing, and Gene's widow came up and said, Malcolm, he wasn't angry at you. He was angry at Stanley. And I went, why would he be angry at Stanley? And she said, because he didn't pay him. And I went, another one.
Yeah. Well, we still have to cover 50 years in the next...
We can't.
In the next 15 minutes. So I'm going to try and jump ahead a little bit.
Yeah.
Because
No, oh lucky man. I just want to get to that, because that I think is if you haven't seen the Lindsay Anderson trilogy, then You should if you're interested in film, because he is a master, and I was very privileged to work with him. And I was, after If won the grand prize in Cannes, I was there with Lindsay, and we're all very happy, of course, because he was so thrilled because he'd been a critic at Cannes. So it meant a lot to him. And so I remember walking down the Croisette, and I put my arm around him, and he wasn't a touchy-feely kind of guy. He hated it. But I kind of knew that, so I just did it anyway to irritate him. And I said, Linz, we're a really great team. We really should make another film together. And he stopped. His eyes rolled back in his head. He said, Malcolm, if you want to do another film with me, I suggest you write it. And walked off. And I went, well, I will write it. Yeah, fuck you. So when I got back to London, I started to write my experiences as a coffee salesman in Yorkshire. And I was only a coffee salesman, I think, for 9 months, and then I got a job in the theater, and I was gone. But it was like my drama school, actually, being a salesman. And so when we got back, I called Lindsay. I said, look, I've got 40 pages of a treatment, and I want you to read it. I think you're going to love it. So I went over to his flat, and gave it to him, and he was lying on his bed, and I was sitting in his armchair. He had his glasses up here, and he started to look. He went, oh, yeah, coffee bear. Is this a comedy? I went, yes, actually, it's quite funny. But it's northern humor. It's northern. You're probably not going to understand it because of that. Because you're from the south. He said, actually, I'm a Scot. Yeah. I went, oh, no. Anyway, he read it. He came over, he put it on the table that was next to him, and he said, oh, Malcolm, it's not very good, is it? And I said, yes, it is. And you better get used to it, because this is your next movie. I don't know where I had the nerve to say that. And he said, oh, really? Well, then you better call David Sherwin, who'd written If. So I called him. I let him read the 40 pages. This is in my flat now. And he went into the bedroom to read it. It was a tiny flat. He came out after like half an hour, and he went, this is bloody fantastic. I love this. I love this. I'm going to work on this with you. So we started writing. It was called The Coffee Man. I couldn't think of another title, but we were sitting in a pub, and I said, Coffee Man, it's such a lousy... We've got to come up with, what is this film about, David? He goes, oh, success and this, luck. I went, luck. Lucky Man. Great. I called Lindsay from, the phone box. Pushed the thing. Lindsay, we've got the title of your new film coming over now. Click. Rushed over, he hated any drop-ins or anything like that. And he was, oh, what do you want? Right, sit down. David, come in, sit down. I'm going to whisper the title of your new film into your ear. Right, just say, and he was getting really irritated, going, oh, get on with it, Malcolm, for God's sake. And I went, Lucky Man. And he went, oh, Lucky Man. Yeah! Brilliant! He came up with it. But of course, this is the genius of Lindsay Anderson. The difference between Lucky Man and Oh, Lucky Man. One is poetic and one is not.
Yes.
And it's the genius of the man. And it was so much fun writing a script and going to the headmaster to get notes and get kicked out. In the end, I said, David, look, you go in with this scene, I'll go in with this. because we realized he felt we were ganging up on him, and he refused, and he insisted on rewrites, if we went in together. So we soon figured out, he'll go in with this, I'll go in with that, and it was much more smoother sailing from there and there. Although, I must say, I was shooting Clockwork Orange, I used to get cards from him, postcards. And one postcard said, "Dear Malcolm, sorry to tell you, OLM off, OFF, exclamation mark, all in red ink, Sherwin on the floor, drunk again." That's all it said. I thought, I'll just take no notice of that, 2 days later, new card. "Did very good work today, Sherwin in top form." That's the way it went. And I must say, it was an extraordinary film to make. It wasn't really very successful. I don't care. It's one of the great subversive films ever made in England. And I think I'm so proud of it. And I don't care. So hopefully the obits will be Malcolm, oh lucky man.
Talking about... that was terrific. Talking about subversive characters, I must ask you about... Alex was pretty nasty. Caligula was probably worse, wasn't he?
Well, I think you're reading your own press here, Ivor. I really, you're taking a very sort of one-dimensional view of things. That Alex is not, by the way, just an evil character. I mean, I think Hitler may have been evil, but he wasn't evil per se. He was a three-dimensional character. He can't be all evil if he loved Beethoven, for God's sake. And the way I played him, look, my brief was, make it watchable. You're playing a rapist and a murderer. Make it watchable. Okay. So I figured I'd make it that the character loves life, gets a kick out of life. Okay, his actions are not socially acceptable, of course, but there's something infectious about somebody who enjoys what they do, right? That's the way I figured it. And I guess it worked.
Malcolm, are we talking about Alex or are we talking about Caligula?
No, Alex. Caligula's a whole thing. The Caligula was a complete and utter diabolical disaster as far as I'm concerned, which was a shame because I put a lot of work into it and I spent a whole year of my life on that damn thing.
And what a cast, what a brilliant cast.
Beautiful cast, yeah.
Terrific.
Helen and John Gielgud, Peter O'Toole. It was fantastic. And, living in Rome, it was the end of a sort of an era. It was it was that really decadent period in Italy, and it was just sort of reached a crescendo and was just on the decline. And, there were some wonderful scenes in it, but, we had a writer who didn't really want to do any rewrites, Gore Vidal. And Gore, he was drinking pretty heavily, and and he didn't like the director. So there was friction right there, and he'd call me at 3 a.m, and I'd say, Gore, for God's sake, I've got to be up in 3 hours on the set doing this damn stuff you've written. I mean, give me a break. Anyway, I couldn't take any more calls from him after a while because it was hopeless. And, and he was a writer, but he'd taken his name off. And I went, well, hey, good for you. You're lucky you can take your name off it. I wish I could take my face off it, but I can't. But there are some things in it that are really extraordinary, and it was it was financed by Bob Guccione. And I remember when Gore Vidal cast me, and I went out to lunch with him, and he explained what it was. And I said, wow, Caligula, that's a wonderful character, really. But he wasn't just mad, was he? I mean, can't play him mad the whole time. It's kind of boring. We got to think of some reason. So he goes, well, no, he was a bit loopy, you know. And this is what he did. And I went, really? Oh, my God. So he was, screwing his sister. And this, and yeah, okay. And okay. So this is what they did in ancient Rome. Okay, that was, okay. Well, this doesn't make him mad. It's just that's the way the society was, you know. So it was all in Suetonius. And I started reading about it and stuff. And of course, you know, Peter O'Toole was there playing Tiberius. John Gielgud, who was my favorite actor, I love John. He was very happy to be in Rome with all those young boys. Frightfully good film. Yeah. Frightfully good. Yeah. Have you been on the set? No, John, I'm just about to go. Never seen so much cock in all my life. Oh, jolly good. Lovely, lovely. Well, do tell me what you think. I said, well, I think they, you know, he goes, where do they all come from? I said, well, I think, you know, this rumor going around is that a lot of them are heroin addicts from the Piazza Navona. He goes, oh, well, where is the Piazza Navona? He was adorable. I loved him dearly. What a great actor. He's a wonderful man.
I love you doing him. And you mentioned Guccione, and some in the audience may not know who Guccione was. He ran a few racy magazines, didn't he?
Well, he was a pornographer who did. He was now that is an evil presence. Talk about a presence. A man that had more chains than Hercules. And I noticed one time. I looked down because he had one button which was on his navel of his shirt, and loads of gold chains. And I noticed, to my horror, that one of the chains had my head on it. Oh. As Caligula, but still, it was still my head. And I thought, my God, there I am resting on his navel. He was he really, I just didn't get it. He must have hated women or something because, you know, the magazines are gynecological, you know, the shots, they're just not sensual at all. They're just, anyway, we don't want to get into that. But so when I first met Gore, I said, well, who's going to pay for it? You know, who's putting up the money? And he went, Bob Guccione. And I went, the pornographer? And he said, Malcolm, just think of him as one of the Warner Brothers. Yeah. Good line, though, isn't it? Yeah, right.
Malcolm, we're going to jump a little bit to Rupert Murdoch. Now, I saw that Rupert at 93 is getting married. Did you know that? Again, yeah.
Well,
again.
Hey,
he's going to keep going. But I loved your performance as Rupert, and just tell me how you got him so down to a T.
Well, you know, there's lots of YouTube things on him, and we all in that production had these, this
prosthetics,
perspective,
prosthetics?
Prosthetics, yes, thank you. We had these prosthetics, and they did a brilliant one for me that sort of went into my mouth and had these huge lines. And it really gave me the character. It was the same guy that had done Gary Oldman's for Churchill. You know, that he designed all those things, and they were really amazing. I think most of the main cast they're very subtle and really quite amazing. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, I'd quite like these things. Every part I play completely changes everything. Really fantastic. Anyway, I just had to learn how he spoke mainly because he has this Australian accent that went through London to New York. So it is quite complex. And I had a wonderful coach who helped me do it. And so, as we all did on that, so it was great.
Yes, okay.
Was this the bill?
No. How did you know, Malcolm? Yes, there it is. Thank you. You know, there's so much more that we can talk about, but before you came on stage, we were talking about actors who win Oscars by going to the prosthesis clinic. Right. And why do you think Hollywood loves that? I mean, Gary Oldman did it as Churchill. Who did it? De Niro did it as the boxer.
Raging Bull.
Raging Bull. So why do you think Hollywood and the voters love somebody who slightly deforms themselves for a great part?
I think it's a load of bollocks. If you really want to know what I think prizes for acting is a load of bollocks anyway.
Yeah.
You know, to be honest with you, how could you possibly judge what the boy did in The Whale to the boy playing Elvis Presley?
Yes.
I mean, how absolutely insane is that? It's nonsense.
Yes.
And, you know, it's just that Hollywood, they just have to give these prizes. And it's basically, of course, to get people, you know, bums on seats. They just have to sell them by giving Oscars, you know, all that hype. Yeah. I've always thought it was just a load of hype. Not a great believer in it myself, but I am a member of the Academy. I did vote, but never one of mine ever win, just so you know.
Yeah.
Because I like to pick what I think is a really superb performance, and we're not supposed to talk about who you voted for, so we'll skip over that, but I certainly didn't vote for too many winners.
Okay.
Put it that way.
I know that we have a tremendous number of questions, but I'm going to ask you one more Oscar question.
Yes.
And I must tell you, am I out of touch or am I too old? Because the winner of Everything Everywhere All Over the Bloody Place, that movie, was... I couldn't watch it. I mean, Malcolm, did you see it, and what did you think?
Well, I know I'm not supposed to comment, but
try.
I'm afraid I tried to watch it twice, and I failed to get through it. So I really don't know. I mean, I don't understand why people just love that film, and I'd love to talk to someone who worked on it, who could explain why it is such a great movie. Now, obviously, people love it and people hate it. You know, it splits opinion, which is what good art should do.
Okay,
so you can't really knock that. Personally, it's not my cup of tea, but then I think maybe you hit it right. Well, maybe we're just old. I don't know.
You're not, I am. Anyway, good answer. I like that. I think we have some questions. Marisa, where are you? Okay.
Hi, right back here.
Because go ahead, and I'm sure there are questions from our lively audience.
Yes, absolutely. So we are actually going to take audience questions both from Zoom and from the live audience. If you have a question and you are in our live audience, please go ahead and raise your hand and wait for a staff member to come to you. I am actually going to go ahead and open with a question from our Zoom audience. So Alyssa Barber on Zoom has a question. Malcolm, what is your favorite memory of David Warner?
Well, David and I went back a long way, 1965. He was a huge star at the Royal Shakespeare Company playing Hamlet. And his Hamlet was one for the generations, you know. Gielgud's was in 47 or whatever. But there was David Warner's, you know, this wonderful kind of long, tall, gangly guy with this long scarf. This Hamlet that he rattled off at such a pace. And it was called the Beatles' Hamlet, you know. And he was amazing, and he was such a nice guy. I had a very humble part in it, and I only had a few smaller parts, but I really liked David. He was always a really good friend to me, and we were pretty close friends. And then, he introduced me actually to Pet Sounds. Very important moment, very important moment. And I went, you mean there is another band besides the Beatles? Yeah. And so we didn't see each other for a while, and he apparently he was drinking heavily, and we have all been through that little thing and come out the other side. And so then, when I did Time After Time, a film I love, David was cast, thank God, as Jack the Ripper, and I was cast as the sort of leading man role, the romantic lead, which I was so happy because I'd just come off Caligula and I was ready for anything. Yeah. So from Caligula to Time After Time was quite a culture shock, and I remember looking at the New York Times, the 10 best and 10 worst, and I was on both categories. And by the way, that's pretty much the way my career has gone.
Yeah, I know you have other questions, but it's been so fascinating, Malcolm. We didn't even talk about your movie with the other legends, Miss Fonda and Lily Tomlin.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think...
And we actually have the trailer, but I don't know if we have time to show the trailer.
Well, listen, then just go see the movie, because I don't often say this, but I love the film. It's terrific. Beautifully written and directed by Paul Weiss, who is one of our absolute best writer-directors. And of course, you've got the legends, and Jane and Lily. And so when I first went into a room with those two, I went, oh, it's so nice to be the youngest amongst us.
What did they say?
That went down well, I can tell you. But it's a fantastic, I think it's a lovely film, and it's actually character-driven. Woohoo! There's no green screen at all. That's great. So, yes. And right now I'm in the middle of shooting a Western, and I've never done a Western before, and I am having such a wonderful time. And my co-star is right here, James Paxton. James, stand up and wave.
And you must tell the audience who James is, please.
His father was Bill Paxton, and Bill and I were going to do this film called The Last Train to Fortune, written by Michelle Rifkin. And Michelle wrote this, and her son is directing it. Adam Rifkin is directing it, produced by Brad Wyman. But so I was going to do it with Bill, and we were all hot to trot 30 years ago. And Lindsay Anderson was going to direct it at one point. Anyway, and as you know, I don't know, he was busy, I was busy, one thing and another. And then sadly, Bill passed away, and then it was broached. Did you start it? Did you invigorate the whole thing?
Yeah, Adam said it was your idea.
Well, I think it may have been. I didn't want to take credit, but I cannot remember. I think I may have said, well, get James. He's a damn good actor. Let him do it, Anyway, never thinking, of course, it would ever come to fruition. And there we are, in the middle of it, and we're on these rocks at, what is it called? Vasquez Rocks, thank you. Incredible. If you haven't been there, take a trip. It's great. Anyway, we're having a fun. It's called Last Train to Fortune.
Okay, we've got some more
My son's
questions.
in it over there. He's
back in
playing in it. And my other son, Beckett, is doing the music.
Oh. Well, we haven't touched them when we were going to show some slides. We were going to show your fabulous kids. There's a couple of your fabulous in the front, but we don't. But and then questions. You must quickly tell us. You have begat. You have begat a wonderful family of talented young people. Give us a quick rundown on that, Malcolm.
Well, I've got 5 children. 2 with Mary Steenburgen. That's Lily, who's the oldest, my only daughter. She's I've got 3 grandchildren, so 3 daughters she has. And then Charlie McDowell, who is a director and a very good one, and did this movie called Windfall with who's in it? Jason Segel.
Yeah.
And very, very good. And Lily Collins, who he's married to, of course, who's beautiful. And
Lily, of course, is of another iconic drummer, the daughter of Mr. Collins.
That's right. Yes, Phil Collins.
Yeah.
Yes. It's all very incestuous, isn't it? Phil Collins, yes. And she is heavenly and a brilliant actress, besides being a really nice, wonderful human being. So we're very lucky. And then there's Beckett McDowell, the singer, songwriter, and Finn, who's not here, and Seamus right here, who's my youngest. And I'm proud of them all. What can I say? Okay. They're amazing.
I think, thank you. I think that we have some other questions, Malcolm, so go ahead.
Yes,
I've got a question right here in the audience.
Okay.
Thank you, Malcolm, for entertaining us for so many years. I have a question about the book. When it was first published, it was published with 20 chapters. And I'm curious if you read it with the 21 characters before you acted out the character, and did it shape how you developed that character?
Okay, now, so the American edition, the publication, was it 21?
It was originally published with 20 chapters, and then the 21st chapter was The Awakening.
Well, I'll tell you what happened.
We're talking about Clockwork Orange, aren't we?
Yeah, the book of Clockwork Orange. So I asked Burgess, and he said, oh, yes, the publisher in England didn't like the fact, that he was cured all right, that he'd be back to his usual self. So to make it palatable for the poor English to read it and be okay with it, he had to make him a bank manager or something. And Kubrick said, don't even read it, it's rubbish. So I never read it.
Yeah.
And I still haven't read it, and I have no intention of reading it. So that is the story, that the publisher asked for it and said, look, I don't feel comfortable if you don't make it, him whole and good and wholesome. So.
Okay, we have some more
Yes.
questions.
Yeah, I heard there were real threats to Kubrick after Clockwork Orange. Was that real? In England, not here. And did that ever happen to you?
Did he what?
So, any threats?
Threats. No, I can't say that I was. That I remember being threatened.
Either yourself or Kubrick.
Kubrick apparently, got letters threatening him and his family. He took them to Scotland Yard, who suggested that he withdraw the film, which he did. But it sounds like, oh my God, censorship or something. But the film had already been playing a year. If it had happened in the first week or second week, do you think he would have? No way. No way. Of course, but it's, very unpleasant. Yes, I was threatened. My life was threatened. I mean, this is America after all. Because I killed old Fatty Kirk.
Yeah.
I did cook. Somebody was pissed off about that. I thought they should get down on their knees and thank me. But I think the Trekkies have now forgiven me. Anyway, but Clockwork, no. So it was banned in England, only in England, and anybody that wanted to see it could get on a charter plane, apparently, that went from Heathrow to over to Paris, and there'd be a special screening for the poor English who were starved of the film in the original language. I mean, I've seen it dubbed in, and you know, with also the Nadsat language that Burgess has come up with. I mean, it's absolutely a real comedy, seeing it in, you know, Portuguese, for instance. I mean, really weird.
So we do have another Zoom question. Ty Metcalf is asking Malcolm, what are the biggest changes you've seen in the film industry from when you first started acting to today?
Oh, well, of course, I suppose the major one is the advent of digital, you know. When I started, of course, it was 35 millimeter, and a take would last, a long take would be 8 minutes, I suppose. But with digital, you can go on for 40 minutes or more, which is, if you're working with Bob Altman. Now, I first used digital in the movie I did with Bob, and you know, he loves to improvise and the whole thing. So, you know, he said to me, he always called me kid. He goes, listen, kid, okay, here's the deal. Okay, she comes in, she's harassing you about, you know, she wants to dance this particular thing. You don't want her to do it, so you're like, just, hey, hold that thought. Go over there, open that door, and tell him you want a cup of tea. Come back, she hits you again. You go, wait a minute, go to that door and tell them to shut up in there. They're making too much noise. I went, okay. Then come back, and then she'll hit you again and go, baby, hold that thought. I've got a meeting. Put your coat on and leave. And I went, okay, great. Well, what about the scene? He goes, that is the scene. And that's the genius of Altman. Altman, who started at Universal directing for the Craft Hour. Wow. And he got fired because there was a big, you know, they had a big thing with all the press were there, and they were interviewing him. He was one of the directors, and he, you know, they said, what do you think, Mr. Altman? He goes, I think it's about as bland as the cheese. So the sponsors fired him, and Universal fired him as well. He got 2 fires. Out he was. But, you know, what an incredible, beautiful man. I think he's one of the most beautiful men I've met in my travels in this crazy business. I loved him to death, and we got to know each other in the early 70s. And, you know, if he came into London, I'd get a call, you know, Bob's here, oh my God, okay, I'll be over. And, you know, I would leave his house, the rental, wherever he was, or the hotel, and it would always be daylight. You think, oh my God, how am I going to drive this car back?
Elena has something to say, and I would suggest that we all come back tomorrow night for part 2 of Malcolm.
I am going to take the last question, Mr. McDowell, and ask, why did you move to Ojai and why do you stay here?
Why choose Ojai?
Why move? Yeah.
Why Ojai and why do you
There
stay
goes the anonymity. Yeah. Well, I know you've been to Ojai. Once you hit Ojai, that's it. I mean, I've been pretty much a lot of places in the world, and I don't think I've ever been to a place that's more beautiful than Ojai, and it reminds me so much of California of yesteryear that I see in movies. It reminds me of Chinatown or the orange groves, the absolute beauty of the mountains and the all the citrus and the avocados. And it's stayed reasonably small, and it hasn't been sort of, I don't know, the whatever X generation hasn't completely destroyed it. Although somebody said, "Hey, we're one of the hip crowd in Ojai." I went, "Oh, good, okay, well, how long have you been here?" "We've been here 7 years." I went, "Oh, okay." Right. Well, hey, you're really hip then. I mean, it's but it's a great place, and the people are lovely. And by the way, that also goes for Ventura. And I think Ventura is one of the great secrets. But hey, they're coming for you, believe me. They'll be coming up the coast. It won't be long before you're paying ridiculous rents, and the prices are going to go through the roof. They did in Ojai. In Ojai, it was like a sleepy backwater, and for $20,000 you could get a really nice, in a little orange grove or something, and all right, 200,000. Now they're asking like $6 million for that. You're going, what, for that shack? It's a tear down. No, it's not. I should have really been in the real estate business. Jesus.
It's happening here, Malcolm, in Ventura.
Oh yeah, it's going to happen. Believe me. So, but it's I love this place, and I remember always I love the main street here, and always thought, look at this. It's the most sort of intact main street. Why aren't the movies here shooting here? And then they did something here. I can't remember what it was.
They did Swordfish with John Travolta,
What was it?
Swordfish with John Travolta.
Oh my God, another big hit.
Yes.
Oh. It's still a good secret, don't worry.
Well, I think, I don't know if you want to talk about Malcolm, what he's going to do at the table. You don't know this yet.
What table?
Have we run out of time, folks?
Yes, so I wanted to say thank you all so much for coming. Obviously, thank you to Ivor, thank you to Mr. McDowell. This has been a wonderful evening. Mr. McDowell will be here for about 10 additional minutes to sign autographs at that table at the left of the stage.
Okay, apparently, news to me.
And if you enjoyed tonight's program, we sincerely encourage you to consider donating to the museum or becoming a member to support more programs like this, including the next installment of this series, Ivor Davis Up Close and Personal, with Chris Carter on May 18th. So thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Support the museum.
Malcolm, thank you. That was fantastic.